Hello students, hope you all are doing good. Before telling you what I am teaching you in today's video lesson, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen these kind of pictures in your daily newspapers, news channels, magazines, etc.? So what are these pictures? These pictures are nothing but graphs. So what are graphs? Graphs are visual representation of numerical data. So why do we need graphs? Why do we use graphs? Because graphs actually helps you to do lot more and more easily than you would do with a table full of numbers. And it's definitely interesting to look at colorful picture than the set of numbers on a table, right? And it also helps you to compare quantities, make observations or see trends, and also it helps you to draw insights from the data given to us. You already know there are multiple ways to represent a data on a graph according to various situations. So in today's video lesson, let me quickly brush you up some types of graphs that you are already aware of and also introduce you to a new kind of graphs. Here, look at this graph. This graph represents Anu's marks in 3 terminal examinations. By looking at these graphs, we can say that Anu's marks in 3rd terminal examination is the highest and in the 1st terminal examination it is the lowest. What we are doing here? We are comparing Anu's performance by looking at those bars. So a graph which is used to show comparison among categories is called a bar graph. So what is bar graph? A graph which is used to show comparison among categories. Bar graphs can also have double bars and which are called as double bar graphs. For example, look at this graph. Here sales of fruits is given over 2 days. Here the sales on Monday is shown in blue bars and Tuesday represented in red bars. From this you can compare sales of respective fruits over 2 days. Let's look into pie chart. Assume your mom gave you ₹100 as a pocket money and you spend it as follows. You spend 40 rupees for studies, 20 rupees for sports, 20 rupees for movies, 10 rupees for food and 10 rupees for other expenses. You have 100 rupees, that means you have a whole and you are dividing this whole among different types of expenses. And this circle represents the whole. So a pie graph is used to compare the parts of a whole. Now look at this graph. Students of 8th standard are divided according to their weights. Here there is no whole, but it has bars over the intervals. There are no gaps between the bars as there are no gaps between the intervals. So a graph that shows data in intervals is called a histogram. What is a histogram? A graph that shows data in intervals. These are the graphs which you have already learnt in your previous year. Now solve few problems for practice. The number of students in 6 different classes are given below. In class 7th, there are 120 students. In class 8th, there are 135 students. In class 9th, there are 130 students. In class 10th, there are 150 students. In 11th, there are 80 students and in 12th, there are 75 students. Represent the data on the bar graph. Problem number 2. Given data shows performance of 2 unit tests of a student. In English, she got 70 marks in first test and 78 marks in second test. In Hindi, she got 60 marks in first test and 77 in second test. In maths, she got 87 in the first test and 60 in the second test. In science, she got 60 marks in the first test and 70 in second test. And in social science, she got 60 in the first test and 60 in the second test too. Now draw a double bar graph to represent this data. Problem number 3. The number of hours spent by a schoolboy on different activities in a working day is given below. Activities, sleep. Number of hours spent is 8 hours. For school, he spent 7 hours. For in home, he spent 4 hours. For play, he spent 2 hours, and for other activities, he spent 3 hours. Draw a pie chart to represent this data. Problem number 4. Given below is the frequency distribution of the heights of 50 students in a class. So, the class interval here represents the heights of students and frequency represents number of students. So, from 140 to 145 it's 8 students, 145 to 150 it's 12 students, 150 to 155 it's 18 students, 155 to 160 it's 10 students, and in 160 to 165 it's 5 students. Draw a histogram representing the above data. Now let me tell you an incident. Last week my friend Renu was sick, so I took her to the hospital. But the doctor told me that she has a mild fever and you need to check her body temperature every 4 hours. So I recorded her body temperature every 4 hours and it was as follows. At 6 am it was 37 degree, at 10 am it was 40 degree, at 2 pm it was 38 degree, and at 6 pm it was 35 degree. Look at this data now. Can we represent it as a histogram? No, right, because it has no intervals. Can we represent it as a pie graph? No, because there is no hole which we can divide it into parts, right. So, how can we represent this data? In this data, what you observe is the data continuously changes over periods of time. So, we use line graph here. So, what is line graph? So, a line graph is nothing but a graph which displays data that changes continuously over periods of time. How to draw graph to represent this data? Let us take a sheet of paper and draw x-axis and y-axis. Let us mark time along x-axis and temperature along y-axis. At 6 am, what is the temperature? It's 37 degrees Celsius. So, let us mark it as a point which is 37 units above 6 am. Then we will mark the next point at a height 40 units vertically above 10 am. Next, we will mark third point at a height 38 units vertically above 2 pm. And the last point is marked at a height 35 units vertically above 6 pm. Then connect the points with the line segments. This jagged line along y-axis here represents y-axis doesn't start from 0. Such graphs are called as line graphs. So, now you got to know how to plot a line graph and when will you use it. So, now let us solve some more problems so that you can be clear with this. The following graph shows the temperature of a patient in a hospital recorded every hour. What was the patient's temperature at 1 pm? Now, look at this graph. Let us draw a vertical line at 1 pm. It will meet our line graph at this point. Then what is the height of this point? It's 36.5, isn't it? So, the patient's temperature at 1 pm is 36.5 degrees Celsius. So, here the next question is, when was the patient's temperature 38.5 degrees Celsius? Now, look at the graph and draw horizontal line at 38.5. It meets at this point. Then draw a perpendicular line through this point to x-axis. Where it will meet on x-axis? At 12, right? So, at 12 noon, the patient's temperature is 38.5 degrees Celsius. From this example, you could make observation from the given graph. So, now let us draw a graph from the given data. The number of days a hillside city received snow in different years given as, in the year 2003 it was 8 days, In the year 2004, it was 10 days. In the year 2005, it was 5 days, and in the year 2006, it was 12 days. First, let us represent the data by points. That is, in the year 2003, you have 8 days of snowfall. In the year 2004, you have 10 days of snowfall. In the year of 2005, you have 5 days of snowfall, and in the year of 2006, you have 12 days of snowfall. Then connect these points by line segments. Solve this problem as an exercise. The number of electric bulbs manufactured by a factory during 5 consecutive years is given below. In 2006, it's 2 lakh. In 2007, it's 8.5 lakh. In 2008, it's 7 lakhs. In 2009, it's 5 lakhs. And in 2010, it's 1 lakhs. Draw the line graph representing the above data. Problem number 2. By observing the given graph, answer the following questions. What were the sales in the year 2012, in the year 2014, in the year 2010? Compute the difference between the sales in 2012 and 2016. Now, let us recall what are the things we have learned today. We have learned different types of graphs. What are those? Bar graph, pie graph, histogram and its examples. And we also learned what are line graphs and its examples. We will continue our discussion on linear graphs and its application in the next class. Hope you all enjoyed the class. Have a nice day.